Merhabalar herkese, değerli konuklar. Bu akşam Sinopale 8'in son akşamında buluştuk. Bugün uzun bir etkinliğimiz var ve etkinliğimiz çift dilli olacak. Hem İngilizce hem Türkçe gerçekleştirilecek ve simultane tercüme olacak. O nedenle ekranlarınızın altında bulunan tercüme kısmından tercüme seçeneklerini seçebilirsiniz. So the event will be both in English and Turkish. For those of you who don't know, you can choose the translation on the bottom of your screen. Söylediğim gibi bu akşam Sinopale 8'in son akşamında buluştuk. Aramızda bu yılki etkinliğimizin gerçekleştirmesi için çok değerli katkılar sunan sanatçılarımız, küratörlerimiz, organizasyon ekibinden değerli arkadaşlarımız, Sinopale dostlarımız var. Değerli dostlarımız, konuklarımız, hepiniz Sinopale 8'i sonlandıracağımız kapanış etkinliğimize hoş geldiniz. Şimdi bu akşamın ilk programı olan Sinopale'nin İlişkisel Atlası projesinin son etkinliği için küratörümüz Rana Öztürk'e bırakıyorum sözü. Hocam buyurun.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to welcome everyone to the 7th event of Sinopale's Relational Atlas series. To shortly explain the general concept, I can just say I wanted to explore how Sinopale situated Sinop into a larger global geographical context through the artworks exhibited and made in Sinop. So I invited artists who actually created maybe previously non-existing or invisible links with places outside of Sinop. So until now, we had 6 artists who had responded in a creative way to their earlier projects that they presented in Sinopale exhibitions before. And they are all available, and all the information available online on Sinopale website. Today we are finishing with a talk by Jacqueline Heerema, who is the founder of Satellietgroep. And she was part of Sinopale for a satellite group in 2012. And she has initiated some artist in residency program, which included Maurice Bogart, Bahanur Nasya, and Yılmaz Vurucu at the time. So each of them, Yılmaz Vurucu and Bahanur Nasya is produced as a collaborative work. And Maurice also made a work for Sinopale as a result of this residency. And the results of this residency was presented in Sinop, Istanbul, and the Netherlands in Den Haag. So I was interested, in this idea of satellite group. Maybe I'm not pronouncing right, satellite group, I think. Jacqueline will say it better. But I was interested in inviting Jacqueline to talk about it because it's a really long-term project. It's an artist collective where she brought together a network of artists and various specialists and scientists to do research and to do projects on coastal landscapes across different parts of the world. And Sinop was part of this network through Sinopale. And I was interested in seeing how Sinopale is becoming part of a larger understanding of maybe the sea, coastal landscapes, and the relationship between humans and nature, which was the main interest of Satellietgroep in general. So I'm very interested in hearing more about this from Jacqueline. And also Maurice Bogart is here with us today as well. So he will also participate in the conversation. So yeah, I would like to also welcome him here. And so maybe I just leave it to Jacqueline now. I have to share the screen, I know.
Yeah, but maybe you can. Do people see me now? Well, okay, Sinopale, yes. So thank you, Rana, for inviting me and for being able to share tonight the experiences that resulted into participating in the Sinopale 4 in 2012 and continued afterwards until we are now in 2022. I already see messages. It's like meeting old friends again, like Meli and Ma here. I'm very glad that they are also here. And Maurice, of course, is here. Maurice Bogaert is a Dutch artist who actually participated in 3 projects of Satellietgroep. But maybe let's get back to the start in 2006, because Satellietgroep is based and founded in the Netherlands. And I can understand that the whole world perceives the Dutch people as the best water management people, but still there are a lot of issues, and that concerns that, our relationship with the sea. Of course, we have a beautiful artistic tradition stemming from the 17th century, when people from all over the world, painters, came to paint the famous Dutch light in the Netherlands. But by now it also has become, or by 2006, it was mostly engineering issue, because already climate change and rising sea levels was on the agenda of engineering research projects. And the interesting thing was that in 2006, I noticed that art, culture, and heritage were not at all a part of all these modifications of beaches and other parts of the Netherlands. And the interesting thing in the Netherlands is that in general, the public perceives the shoreline as their shoreline. It's a free public space, so it is not meant to be commercialized. Of course, we have our tourist research, but overall there's more an idea that it should also be in balance with the natural dunes and beaches where people can come and go to have an idea of a free horizon. So that lack of involvement of the arts and culture and heritage into all these coastal modifications. It could be dikes, it could be sandy shores. My youth beach is actually buried down the latest innovation of a coastal protection measurement. So that triggered the initiatives, and we got together also with the idea that issues like our relationship with ourselves, with our environment, with issues like rising sea level is too huge a topic to handle on yourself. So that's what triggered the artist collective. And we started out also as a multidisciplinary collective with architects, with designers, with anthropologists. And in the first part of the project, we started in, based in the Netherlands, based in The Hague. It has one of the biggest beach resorts in the Netherlands called Scheveningen. But that is also a former fishing town. There was a small fishing community, and we started our first residency there. And from then on, we discovered that I had already been myself artist in residence in several locations elsewhere, that the idea of inviting somebody over to be a guest in a particular locality within a particular community was actually a very nice idea. Besides that, we also hosted The Hague-based residents in our The Hague-based program in the beginning. And it doesn't involve only artists, it also involves philosophers, urbanists, anybody who has a particular interest in trying to figure out how our relationship with, well, first, of course, the sea, second, coastal transitions, all these modifications of public spaces, and how that works. And if we can develop another kind of narratives that also tap into the artistic tradition of the people and the artists that came before us, because we are not the first and we are not new, but we try to merge it into new visual narratives. And so the North Sea, we started out, of course, near our own locality, and discovered that the multi-perspective is one of the main things that we are interested in. And that means that it's also a question Rana asked me, like, how do you select your locations, or how do you come up with ideas? It's basically involvement, curiosity, maybe even passion that triggers projects. And Satellietgroep started in itself in 2006 out as a project, and now it has evolved already over 16 years. So a project can become a project with a capital A. Yeah, so Rana, continue. Yeah. So there's a huge changes, and you have to keep in mind that when we started in 2006, that was a different time when, well, in the Netherlands, of course, coastal transitions were engineering. They had problems to solve, but also the whole sea level rise was already researched within scientific domains for decades. Paul Crutzen coined the anthropogenic as the new geological era in which humanity has an impact like a geological force on the whole planet. But that was in the scientific engineering domain, and the public awareness was not that huge. So that became one of our triggers, that there is so much going on. How can we, from an artistic perspective, without having any ideas about this is good or this is bad, but out of curiosity, what is actually happening and how can we engage people to become a community that is actually concerned about the environment. And I know this sounds, in retrospective, it's really nice, because in 2006 we were often, even by funding organizations in the Netherlands, they said, oh, there's the sea again, why, Jacqueline, why again? And by now you can notice a complete shift in all the artistic practices, the relationship with between ourselves, with otherness, with the more than human and whatever names it gets, but with the planet as a whole has become one of the big targets of our of focus, which also includes maybe a new issue, because the ecological footprint of art itself is becoming huge. If you look at the Venice Biennial right now, most artists are concerned and working in themes around the planetary crisis that we humans instigate, and people fly over there to visit and see the art that is concerned with the planet. So I think there is already a rumor going on that should be maybe the next topics to resolve. If you have any questions, Rana, please intervene.
Okay, it's going well, but I mean, of course, maybe you can talk about how you started to really expand through different geographies? Like, yeah, I mean, it started maybe in the Netherlands, and then it started to grow out of the north, other seas, etc.
Yeah, we started out as an artist collective doing public interventions and stuff like that. And what you're looking at now is one of the magazines we made as one of the first magazines. We did an open call and invited artists and designers and you name it to contribute to a magazine. And this is the result. And the magazine was the first one was released, I think, in 2007. It was called the CMAG, the SMAG, and that became spread all over. At that time, we were still working with the mailing list, and it grew in no time to 600 contributors, people that were all involved and interested in. At one point we had a specific topic, of course, the sea and the interrelationship with coastal innovations and stuff like that. But the perspective could be so diverse that people could work on topics like light or comfort, discomfort, alienation, or whatever. And then we started when we started our first residency in the middle of a surfing community in Scheveningen. It was actually 1.5 stacked reused shipping container. We also could start with public events like a cinema at sea, and we did it at Bad Gast, as was the name of our residency. We had it for like 5 years. And then if you continue to the next slide, we did it also at big events that attracted international performers. We did it also as part of the Now Wakes the Sea project in, for instance, Georgia. But I remember we had also an event, not on the beach, but in the whole Binasi of Sinop, because that's a way to engage people. And in these programs, we often connect already existing works with new works that are developed by artists in residency, so that people that come to that screening event in the open air, it's free for everybody, they can relate to topics that are dealing with their own environment, their familiar everyday life maybe, but at the same time also see films that are produced in a completely different location, but may have the same topic.
Yeah, and also maybe you can talk a little bit about how you decided to maybe focus more on artist residency programs, and how did it happen?
that came in 2006. No, in 2006 we started out with a group, and the group was growing. The collective was growing, and we noticed that people wanted to actually work with us, which was of course the best compliment you can get. And then at a certain moment we were already looking from the start, like, because there is no cultural space on the seaside in The Hague at that time, nothing. So one of our aims was, let's try to see if we can establish such an open community space where people can come and work and develop new works. Bad Gast became the first one, because at that moment we were in a recession in the Netherlands, or in Europe, or maybe the whole world, I don't remember. And a big hotel that was meant to be built in Scheveningen on the seaside, the building got postponed. And at that moment, we stepped in together with the surfing community, and we got permits to use that space for 1 year. In the end, it lasted 5 years. By now, recently, the hotel has been built. But that gave us a perfect opportunity, because the surfing village was a very dynamic space where people could come together, repair their boards, learn to repair their boards, get surfing lessons, get the right equipment, whatever you name it. And so in the middle of that, we had our badgast, our 1.5 stacked sea container, and we started inviting artists that showed an interest to work with us. And then we noticed they came from all over the world. Like, this is a work by James Gertz from Australia. And the particular idea of building a community of artists that includes also scientists and local practitioners and local people. That idea grew and grew, and that's resulted also in the Now XSC program, of course.
Yeah, and also it gave you the opportunity to exchange residencies in a way, from my end.
Yeah. Yeah, because we started out with well, we had our first open call, and we got for badgast, for the 1.5 stacked sea container, and so without any fancy stuff around it, we got 300 responses. People from all over the world wanted to join us, so we were like, okay, and what's going on in your country? Because that's what you learn when you invite an artist in resident to come over. You also learn what is the origin of his or her interest. And it stems often from a kind of imbalance that is an issue. This was a work, by the way, from Rana, our first artist in resident from Egypt. Beautiful. That where was I? Oh yeah, now we're going to the Black Sea. So that's and we started making presentations like we do today. I've done that forever in multiple times and on multiple venues, especially also non-artistic venues. Like also politics, like I gave a talk on arts and climate change in the European Parliament in Brussels. You have to stop here, Rana. Maybe go back a little bit when we start with the Now XSC. Because you can involve people, you can also involve the politicians of the European Parliament. And the reason why we started our international bilateral exchange program, that is called Now XSC, is that at a lot of these presentations, we also met colleagues, cultural partners that said, yeah, we would like to do the same. We would like to engage, or we are already doing something in the same line. Can we collaborate? And well, that's what triggered the Now XSC project. But I think, Rana, if you go a little bit, to the next slide, maybe you invite Maurice in, because he is, of course, one of the, I'm the artist curator of the whole program together with my team. But Maurice is one of the artists that actually participated in as an artist in residence in Sinop.
Yes, it was, yes. I'm not sure. Well, it's nice to see a lot of old acquaintances and people I met 10 years ago. So that's really nice. Maybe I think it's nice to say a little bit about the work I did, which is called indeed Guest Worker. And basically the work was based on a very simple agreement or deal we made that I made with the guys working at Ulgen's model shop. And the idea was, if I work for you for a week or maybe 2 weeks, I can't remember, then you will work for me later to help me make my artwork. And for me, this was sort of an experiment. Like, we didn't speak out each other's language, but I thought, okay, maybe the tools, the craft, that will be our common language. So I helped them to work to make the model ships they normally make. and they helped me reconstruct a boat called the Ocean Wave, which took an important role in a work by Bas van Ader, a Dutch performance artist who indeed drowned at sea at some point. And I thought, this is a story we all know, both on the North Sea coast and on the Black Sea coast, of a story of young men going to sea when they shouldn't. And I thought, I thought this would be a nice story to try and talk about while working together. So I think that's basically what I did, and I still have the model boat, and it's
After it had been in my studio for like 5 years.
Oh yeah, and I still have it. It's still here. Maybe we should.
Yeah.
Put a bit of a
Oh
note
yeah,
on.
nice.
It's still there.
Such a beauty. Yeah. I remember we presented it on top of a television, which would now be inconceivable, I think.
Yeah, we don't have televisions anymore, I suppose.
No. No, and of course you were a parallel resident with Bahanu and Yilmaz. Maybe you can tell a little bit about how that was.
Well, for me, it was really interesting because since Banu and Yilmaz are both of Turkish descent, but living abroad, Yilmaz at that time in Canada and Banu in Vienna in Austria. So it was really nice to come to Sinop together with them, at both outsiders and insiders at the same time, and they could really help me to try and tune into a community I didn't know, of course. So they were really, for me, they were really my, I don't know how to say, my translators or guides in a place I had a really good time, but also sometimes found difficult to understand in a good way. Like an artist in residency is, like trying to figure out how a place works and trying to make a work about it in a relatively short time.
Yeah, if you go back one slide, Rana, because the nice thing about our collaboration with Sinopale was that the first step was taking place in Sinop with the artists in residence, and having these talks and screenings and things in the public space, the screenings at Halbinasi and stuff like that. And then I gave a talk to the school teachers, which was also very, very nice. We had an open air meeting in Sinop. But afterwards, it was like a step program, because the idea of a bilateral residency is that actually the residents also come to the Netherlands. So Bahanu and Yilmaz were our guests in The Hague for, I think, also a month. And they did the whole post-production of the documentary, The Sea and Me, in The Hague. And then we had a program at the Museum for Education, Nature and things like that in The Hague, in which they had a premiere. It was really, they just finished it like 5 seconds before it was presented. We had a program there, and we had a program in another venue about art and activism. And then we were invited back to Istanbul at the end of the year to do a presentation, a screening exhibition, if you can actually think of such a thing, which was also a complete program in which we matched both Turkish and Dutch works, which is next slides, I think. Yeah, there's the boat on the TV. Yeah, so that was a parallel screening program, which involved also works by Imre Azem and Jacqueline Heerema, and because we have also, like Jacqueline Heerema has a very tactile material conceptual way of working. In the Netherlands, we have an artist who does in his own way a kind of related work. So we try to see if we could match these projects for the audience to engage. Well, next stage by then was already we were developing the Dutch Georgia exchange, in which a Dutch filmmaker was in Georgia together with a resident, and then Anna came to work with us in Scheveningen, well, and then the story goes on and on and on. And what's interesting is that more and more of these exchange projects, well, they became, of course, part of our collection of what we call the Anthropogenic Coastal Atlas, and it became a body of artworks that could also be presented beyond the residency itself, because the idea with the residency is somebody comes, starts working, starts engaging with people or materials or whatever, and then at the end we have a presentation in public, which could also be only the first concept. And sometimes works evolve afterward, or sometimes it is a complete work. And with all these projects, this is Maurice again, in St. Petersburg. With all these projects, we can actually make programs to engage larger communities that go beyond the one presentation or moment of presentation we had at the finissage of a residency.
Yeah, so I mean, I was also wondering, since this keeps adding up, maybe the initial issues that you started with also started to change gradually. So you now have a large archive of all these works, and maybe your view on what is happening along the sea or with the sea, and our relationship with sea and nature or coastlines might have maybe shifted as a result of all these, or I mean.
Yeah, that's no. Yeah, I in a tiny way, I hope we contributed to raising more, not only professional, but especially public awareness on or consciousness, even climate consciousness. I mean, that is what is seeping in now, and I think the arts have a really big role in making people aware that there's so much happening that we should not, well, the world is changing, but we need to change. And climate change in itself, well, we did a project called an exhibition program called Climate as Artifact, climate as something we, humanity, make. So we have to step in and step up and do more things. And that awareness in 2006, that was also within our own collective. It was only like a small budding seed, but realizing and so many programs and projects and new artworks that are shared again and on and on and on, that gives value for people to relate to. At least that's what we noticed.
Yeah, and it's also suggesting that this is an issue that can't be comprehended on one's own. So you need to have a collective efforts to understand and to also do something about these issues.
Yeah, I think by now, one of the points we keep on our in focus is that climate change is not only a political or engineering thing to solve, but it is a cultural task. We have to change. Our whole culture has to change as humanity. Otherwise, we don't survive, which is also maybe not that bad option, but we have to be aware that is going on. And 15 years ago, that awareness was still at the minimum. So happy. I'm happy that so many artists are now working in engaged
Yeah, it's
projects.
like much more urgent for us to deal
Yeah.
with. So I'm really impressed with how you have been working on this so consistently all these years.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
so rewarding. I mean, it's also like because the community we are of course a collective with a shifting team. Most team members are always most team members are former artists in residence who decide to become part of the team for a period of time. And so they also bring in their specific knowledge, like we did now HSC in Sinopale, we did with Rana who has a background in more landscape architecture and is now as an artist completely involved in the balance of fresh water, salt water, you name it. And Eliane Esther Bots, who is a filmmaker, and she is by now, she's also doing really well. So it's really nice that it is also maybe a springplank, a thing that you can jump, you can start and you can jump into your own career, into your own networks, and it becomes. Well, I always cherish the idea that it's the whole body of people around us is like an extended family. Because we share something.
Yeah, it's like Sinopale.
Yeah, I think that's also the thing that brought us together is that Sinopale also has a very long focus on that particular part of the world and brings so many people in that bring also ideas that are spread around the world again. So yeah, there's a parallel, of course.
Yeah. Actually, I am also aware of the time. So normally we had some time for some questions, but if there is somebody who wants to ask one question, we can have it now, or maybe we can also be part of the conversation later. I mean, maybe, is there anyone who wants to join? Who wants to have a comment?
I want to ask a question, actually.
Okay.
Thank you for the great presentation, by the way. It was amazing. So in some part of Jacqueline's presentation, she said footprint of art itself is huge, which is so right. And this had me thinking about our edition of this year's Sinopale, because this was one of the reasons that we thought like we are using so much resources of the world to make these events realized, and like there was COVID, so we thought, okay, we should just stop for a moment and focus on our archives to like interpret them and stop the flights and the productions, everything. So but also like it's so easy to get together because we are from all over the world, and like we are by one click we can get together and make this event. But also it's so difficult to have the public, because we are all artists and cultural managers here. Mostly we are doing like this without the public. It's so difficult to have them click the Zoom meeting link and come here, sit for 3 hours and listen to everything. So in one way it's so efficient, but in another way it's not that efficient. So I was thinking and wondering your personal thoughts about this, like in what form art should evolve, where it is still a bit has the intimate of being in person, but also has less footprint.
Yeah. You were asking me?
I mean, all of the group.
Yes. Now, if I can respond spontaneously, because I think when Rana started about the Relational Atlas, and some of the questions popped up, like how did you perceive Sinop? And maybe you also did, because I'm really curious. Did you give the stage also to the Sinop people? like we are here, like you say, artists, cultural managers and stuff like that. So we speak a particular language, but maybe it's also nice to have the Relational Atlas number 8, the next one, in which only the citizens of Sinop themselves speak their mind about. Because I know in a lot of art projects, the difficulty is also that an artist in residency comes in and they relate to the people get engaged, and after a month or 2 months or whatever period, the artist leaves. And it's actually quite interesting maybe to see what is the idea of the residents of Sinop themselves. But maybe you already investigated that. You ask them, you give them the stage, like, okay, you have an hour on Zoom, do your thing. I don't know.
Yes, actually, another project, a cup of tea as an archive that will come afterwards. That series of events was more with Sinopians. Every project has its specificities. Most of the events in that series was only with Sinopians, including, of course, artists who visited.
Yeah, because I remember when we showed the projects in the Hal Binasi, that the heroes of the evening were the participants who collaborated with the artists in residence, who became part of the documentary or helped Maurice build his boat. And they joined with all their families, and they were the heroes. It was their evening more than it was our evening. And I think that's one of the feelings I always try to bring in these events. Like, this is not our arty talk. No, this is your evening. It's about you.
I think this also ties up to the next group of speakers who would already be here to talk about participatory arts, and I think this kind of engaging with communities. So I would assume what you experienced through all these residencies might also have some resonations with what they are here to say. So unless there's no other question, we can continue with the next part and see if we can still continue talking about these issues all together.
Yeah.
Çok teşekkürler Rana Hocam, Jacqueline Heerema'ya ve Maurice Bogaert'a da katkılarından ötürü çok teşekkür ediyoruz.